For the last decade, Southeast Asia has basically been the holy grail for remote workers, and it's easy to see why. You see these videos promising luxury villas and eating out 3 times a day and perfect weather, all for a fraction of what you'd pay back home. But we need to be real about the price tag here. Even though it is still incredibly affordable, that famous idea of living like a king for $500 a month is basically impossible now. Inflation has hit, currencies are moving, and spots like Bali have gentrified a lot. I've actually spent the last few years living as a nomad across this region, bouncing between Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and I want to share what it actually costs to live a comfortable life here. I am focusing on the standard of living a nomad really needs, like having a proper private apartment and reliable internet, and the freedom to eat well or move around easily without stressing about the budget. So I won't be covering the absolute lowest budget options just to save money, because while that works for backpackers, it's not really the focus of this video. With that standard in mind, let's get straight into the real numbers. Let's start with Thailand, which is basically the benchmark for this whole lifestyle. And the biggest variable in your monthly budget here is definitely going to be your rent, which changes drastically depending on where you decide to base yourself. In a place like Chiang Mai, you can get a modern studio with a pool and gym for around $500 a month. But if you want that island lifestyle in Koh Samui or Phuket, the price for that same standard jumps to around $600 to $800. I know you've probably seen people in other videos or blogs claiming they pay way less than that, but usually those people are staying there during the heavy rainy season, or they are located way out in the middle of nowhere. So basically, the prices I listed are what you should expect if you want to be well located and comfortable during a good time of the year. For food, you have a really interesting balance here. You can find decent local meals for $2 to $3, which helps keep the budget down, but you probably aren't going to eat Thai food for every single meal. If you are a Westerner, eventually you're going to crave some comfort food or just something different, and those meals cost closer to $10. So when you mix the cheap local spots with those Western dinners, you should expect a total food budget of around $350 to $400 per month. Getting around is also super convenient, but the method depends on the city. If you're in Bangkok, you have the SkyTrain, which is modern and cheap, costing around $1 per ride. But if you go to Chiang Mai or the islands, public transport is basically non-existent or just really bad. So your real options are renting a motorbike or use ride-hailing apps like Grab. Between the rental and gas, you're looking at a transport cost of about $100 a month. Since you are probably going to be riding a motorbike here, you are naturally exposed to some risks. And that brings us to a cost that many people neglect, but it is absolutely essential to include in your budget, which is having travel insurance. You simply cannot rely on the public hospitals here as a tourist, so having proper coverage is mandatory. I personally use and recommend Safety Wing because it is designed specifically for this nomad lifestyle. It starts at about $56 for 4 weeks, and the best part is that it gives you medical coverage, not just in Thailand, but in all the other countries on this list too. It covers things like motorbike accidents, as long as you wear a helmet, and even unexpected illnesses. It's just a fixed cost you add to your spreadsheet to stay safe. You can scan the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description to check out their plans. Now, besides health, you also need to stay connected. Most condos have Wi-Fi, but you definitely need mobile data. A good unlimited plan from a provider like True Mobile is super cheap, usually around $35. For leisure, Thailand has a lot of free nature spots, but eventually you will want to do the paid activities, like boat trips to the islands. Those usually cost around $50 each. So if you do something like that once every 15 days, you need to set aside about $100 a month for it. And finally, if you want to explore other cities and get to know the country, you have those travel costs. For example, if you move from Bangkok to Chiang Mai, a comfortable VIP night bus costs around $30. So the total cost really depends on how much you move around. When you add up all these costs for a comfortable lifestyle, you are looking at a realistic budget of around $1,100 to $1,300 a month. It is possible to spend less if you go during the absolute low season, but that won't really align with the comfortable life we are talking about here. Now let's talk about Vietnam, definitely the cheapest country on this list. Housing here is actually really interesting. You just get incredible value. It is very common to rent what they call serviced apartments, which means you get a modern place that often includes cleaning once or twice a week and really fast internet. In a city like Da Nang, near the beach, you can find one of these for around $350 to $500 a month. Food is also cheap here, probably even cheaper than Thailand if you stick to street food. You can get a banh mi for like $1, and a bowl of pho starts at $1.50. If you want to eat at a slightly cleaner local restaurant where you have tables and better hygiene, the price goes up a little bit. But if you want international food, like a pizza or a burger, that is when the price jumps significantly to around $10. Cooking at home or going to the market doesn't make much sense here, because eating out is so affordable. So your total monthly food bill will probably be around $250 to $300. For internet, a SIM card is very cheap, around $10 or less. But you have to be careful, because many unlimited plans actually have a daily cap. So if you work with heavy video calls, that might be a limitation. But there are cafes and co-working spaces everywhere with amazing Wi-Fi that won't cost you much to use, so it balances out. Gyms are also super affordable, costing around $20, but keep in mind they are usually a bit old school with older equipment, though nothing that will actually impact your workout. Transport is basically the same deal as Thailand. You are either going to rent a motorbike or use Grab. The prices for gas and rental are very similar. The traffic might look a bit chaotic at first glance, but in practice, you get used to it pretty fast. For leisure, it is actually quite convenient because most attractions are usually very close to the main cities. If you are in Da Nang, for example, the Lady Buddha and Marble Mountains are right there, so you don't have a huge need for expensive day trips. You basically just pay for the entrance fees, which are usually cheap. So honestly, with $50 a month, you can do a lot of things. Just one thing to keep in mind for your budget is the visa. It costs $25 for a single entry or $50 for multiple entries. It is valid for 90 days, so it is not a huge cost, but it is just something you need to remember to pay. And finally, regarding internal logistics, Vietnam is actually a huge country, so moving between cities actually costs you more time than money. If you want to go all the way from Hanoi down to Ho Chi Minh City, a train ride can easily take over 30 hours, and it costs about $30 to $40. Vietnam is definitely the value king on this list. For a very comfortable lifestyle where you have a serviced apartment and eat out all the time, you are looking at a total budget of around $800 to $900 a month. Next up is Indonesia, which is my favorite destination on this list. But the prices I'm going to share here are basically about Bali, since that is where most nomads go. And the most important thing you need to know here is that the cost changes drastically depending on when you go. If you go during the mid-season, housing is actually quite affordable. You can find a decent place for around $450, which is actually cheaper than the suites in Malaysia. Even a private villa with a pool starts around $800. But when the high season hits and the island gets full, those prices go up fast. So timing is everything here. The food is great. You can grab a nasi goreng at a clean warung for like $1.50. And since there are so many foreigners here, finding international food is pretty easy. A burger at a nice cafe will cost you around $8 to $10. So balancing these two out, you should budget around $300 to $350 a month. Internet can be spotty, so you definitely need a backup mobile plan, which costs about $15. Gyms are also a bit different here compared to the rest of the list, because instead of simple cheap gyms, you mostly find these massive lifestyle centers, so naturally the price is higher, usually starting around $50 a month. For transport, the need for a motorbike is even higher here than in the other countries. Grab cars just get stuck in traffic, so you won't move. You really need a bike to get around. The price is basically the same as Thailand or Vietnam, costing about $100 for rental and gas, and you are going to use that bike a lot to explore the countless free activities on the island like beaches, waterfalls, and hikes. But obviously, you also have the paid side of things. When you factor in the nightlife, beach clubs, and the entrance fees for certain attractions, it is reasonable to set aside at least $100 to $150 a month to really enjoy what the island offers. The visa situation is the most annoying part here. You basically have two paths. First, you have the standard visa on arrival, which costs $35. You can extend it once for another $35, but after 60 days, you have to leave the country. This means you have to fly to Kuala Lumpur, stay there for a few days to reset, and then fly back. Between the flights, the hotel for those days, and food, that trip will cost you around $200 to $250. So when you divide that expense by the 2 months you get to stay, you are looking at a monthly cost of about $120 to $150 just for immigration. The other option is paying an agency to get you the B211A visa. It costs around $250 up front and lets you stay for 60 days, renewable twice for about $170 each time. If you do the math for a full 6-month stay, this also averages out to about $100 a month. So financially, both options are quite similar. It just depends on whether you prefer the convenience of not leaving the island or if you actually want to take a mini vacation to Malaysia every 2 months. So if you avoid the absolute peak season and manage your visa wisely, you can live a very comfortable life here for around $1,100 to $1,300 a month. Finally, let's talk about Malaysia, specifically Kuala Lumpur. This is the most modern option on the list. And while it is the country with the highest cost here, it also delivers the best infrastructure by far. Housing starts at around $700 for a good suite. It is more expensive than Vietnam, but the quality is just on another level. You usually get these very well-located high-rise apartments with infinity pools and amazing views. Plus, there is a huge invisible saving here because these buildings almost always have top-tier gyms and co-working spaces inside, so you don't have to spend extra money on those things. Transport is also completely different. KL has an excellent public transport system, especially the trains, so you really don't need to rent a motorbike. For a whole month of getting around, you are probably looking at spending about $50. Food is a mix. Since it is a more developed country, if you go to proper restaurants, the prices are higher than the neighbors on this list. But you also have the option to eat at street food stalls or simple local spots where the price drops drastically and becomes actually comparable to Bali or Thailand. For internet, there are several local operators with great plans. You can easily find options with 150 gigabytes of data for around $10. For leisure, KL is incredible, but some things do cost money. Visiting the iconic Petronas Twin Towers costs around $30 for a tourist ticket. And since there are also plenty of malls, museums, and rooftop bars, you should set aside about $100 to $150 a month to really enjoy the city. And finally, for logistics, KL is the best hub in the region. If you want to explore other cities within Malaysia, like Penang or Malacca, you can take a super comfortable bus or train for just $10 to $15. And if you want to fly to other countries, the airport here connects to everywhere. Flights to Thailand, Vietnam, or Bali are often cheaper from here than from anywhere else. So it is the perfect base for exploring Southeast Asia. The visa is also a great part of the budget here, because you don't really have to pay anything. Most Westerners get 90 days for free on arrival. You just need to fill out the digital arrival card beforehand, but otherwise, it is a huge saving compared to the other spots. So considering the high quality of life you get here, if you include your rent, food, entertainment, and all the other costs, a realistic monthly budget sits between $1,200 and $1,400. So to wrap this up, if we look at the big picture here, Vietnam is definitely the cheapest one, while Malaysia might cost a bit more, but when you average everything out, the final number is actually quite similar across the region. So it is fair to say that starting from around $1,000 to $1,200 a month, you can have a genuinely comfortable life in these countries without stressing about just surviving. Obviously, these costs are based somewhat on my personal style, so if you eat less international food or don't mind staying a bit further from the center, you can definitely save some money. But that $500 budget people talk about is really more for backpackers. If you want a life where you are productive and actually enjoying your money and your time here, you need that higher baseline. And if you are planning to spend time in Southeast Asia, do not forget that having health insurance is essential. The link for Safety Wing is right there in the description, so make sure to check it out. And if this video helped you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep growing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.